So, hi, my name's Steve and welcome to the Seaside Allotment channel. Now I don't know whether you're anything like me, but I get a bit bored of winter gardening because nothing happens. we have loads of stuff in the ground and we're harvesting a lot, but nothing really grows, nothing really changes. And so I get a little bit bored. And so I've created this grow room. And this is my conservatory, which I use as my den and office. And I wanted to be surrounded by growing, changing plants. One time I had lots of houseplants in here, but I got bored of those as well because basically they just sat there exactly the same month after month after month. They never changed. And no, that's not what I wanted. So I thought what I'd do today is give you a little bit of a tour of this little tiny grow room, and it's kind of multi-purpose. So it's a fantastic kind of place to start your seedlings off and grow them on for the first 3 or 4 weeks until they're ready for planting. But it's also a brilliant place for actual growing of harvestable crops. And I love that. I love watching everything just grow into maturity and then watching everything gradually ripening and coming ready to harvest while I'm sitting in here watching the TV or whatever I'm doing. So yeah, it's a lovely little space, and I'm a bit of a tech tinkerer as well. I used to work as a strategist in the IT industry. I did lots of technology strategy and business strategy and things like that, so I like tinkering a little bit. And there's a massive opportunity when you've got electricity and Wi-Fi to kind of play around in a way that I just can't do on the allotment, or at least not cost effectively. So, and then the final thing is that I get a little bit of seasonal effectiveness disorder. Not a lot. I mean, I'm not like just all depressed and curled up in a heap or something, but I am. I just notice that when I'm not exposed to sunny days and, bright contrast, that, life's just a little bit duller than it is in spring and summer. And so that's one of the benefits in here as well now, because I've got these amazing grow lights, thanks to Spider Farmer, that, really brighten the room up and give it, a really sunny feel. So yeah, let me just step you through the sort of things that we've got in here and how I'm going to use them or play around with them in winter. And I think the other thing is that, there's so much opportunity now for experimentation, because each environment that I grow in, is a whole new challenge. When we set the allotments up, mine was set up as a 365-day a year growing space with polytunnels and low tunnels and cold frames and all of that sort of thing. And it's taken me 2 or 3 years to figure out how to use that effectively. And then when we set Debbie's allotment up, she really wanted that to be a perennial growing area. There's a whole host of challenges with that. And when we set Jennie's allotment up, we wanted that to be minimum work and effectively a kind of plant and forget it until harvest time sort of place. We just harvested the broad beans, for example. We just harvested the garlic, but basically, we put those in October and we took them out in June, and very little work was required in between. So that was the way we did that. Now the back garden was a whole host of additional challenges, because there's bright areas, there's shady areas, there's windy areas, there's sheltered areas. It's a very different growing environment to the allotment. And of course, this grow room and the grow lights are a whole new set of challenges again, a whole load of opportunities and, lots of new things to learn. And of course, I love learning new things. So yeah, let's have a look around. So I know lots of people obviously grow seedlings in the conservatories, but I'm growing the triffids. And these are tomatoes, and I've intentionally not kind of managed them very well because I just want to see what happens, because I've got quite a lot of space in here. I've got one here, I've got another one here. I've just let the side shoots grow and I've just tied them into the main stem just so that I get more flowers on them. And they're just amazing. I absolutely love them. Debbie and I love them. And yeah, they just provide such a mass of greenery. And of course we've been harvesting tomatoes now for, well, near enough a month, I think, in here. And that makes all the difference. It's fantastic. They're just, I think they look absolutely beautiful. And then we've got our cucumbers, and this is the second plant. The first plant sort of finished its harvest a few weeks ago, and so we put in a second one here. I think we had about 15 cucumbers off it or something like that. But it's just, again, it's just beautiful. And I've got another cucumber here, and we put this little shelf in here so that when I've got the sail up, which is we have up in spring and summer, and we take down for the rest of the year. So when it's winter and early spring, this container here actually goes on the top of this cabinet, but obviously with a sail it won't fit, so it's on here. And we just have all these little cucumbers, and we've been eating these for goodness knows how long, I don't know, 6 or 7 weeks, something like that. And I just love watching them growing. Absolutely so much fun. And I just put some strings in across here so that the plant kind of trails across. And when watching the TV, I just love watching this plant as it kind of finds its way around the room. It's just great. I've got another one of my triffids here just growing above the sail. And so much greenery and so many tomatoes coming. I've got my little shelf up here, and this is a brilliant place in spring for tomatoes and peppers. It's lovely and warm up here, and it increased the ventilation. I've got little fans at both ends and little USB fans, and they work brilliantly. They're quite quiet, and at the moment I've just got some golden purslane up there. That's another real heat-loving plant. Ventilation's hugely important in a conservatory space like this, which can get quite humid and the air can get quite still. And so we've got a fan here just next to the window, and that blows across the room, and you can see all these plants moving here. And I can adjust it as well, and it can, you know, it is actually blowing this rack as well up the top here, where I've got my beetroot under these grow lights. And because I sit in here, I've got these Spider Farmer grow lights in here, but I've got this shade so that they don't dazzle me. I can't actually see the lights when that shade's up, and that makes it great because in here we get such a lot of bright light. And I've got these on at the moment because the sun's just swung round now, so from about 3:30 in the afternoon we actually don't get any sun in the conservatory, but the grow lights do the job. So I don't like the fans on all the time. I only want them on when it's warm, and so I've got them connected to this little Digiten thermostatic plug, and this is the remote for it. And so at the moment it's configured to come on at 70 degrees, so it switches the fan on at 70 degrees and it switches it off at 69 degrees Fahrenheit. And at the moment it's monitoring the temperature, and it's 81 degrees in here, so the fans are all on, the ones up the top and the ones here, and all the fans are connected through this Digiten thermostatically controlled plug. And of course it's got an override on here, and as I said, you can work it on here, and you've got a manual override, and you can set it, and you can use this either for heating or cooling. So you can set it to switch something on when the temperature drops below a certain temperature or rises above a certain temperature. I've got it configured for cooling at the moment, so when it goes above 70 degrees the fans come on. So everything in my grow room is also connected to Alexa, turn off the fans. Silence. Yeah, everything's connected to Alexa. I really like that because whilst it's nice to have everything automated, it's also nice to have a really simple override for everything. So in here, I can override whether the fans are on or off, depending on what I'm doing, like recording a video. I don't want the fans on even though it is above 70 degrees Fahrenheit. I've got this little radiator, and that's got its own thermostat, and that comes on at night and it keeps the room above 50 degrees Fahrenheit, which is perfect for tomatoes and peppers. Of course, I don't need to use it at this time of year, but in winter, it's fantastic. It makes such a massive difference. Light is not enough for tomatoes and peppers. You really need the temperature above 50 Fahrenheit. So the grow lights are also connected to Alexa. Alexa, turn off the sun. There we go. And one of the kind of benefits that I didn't kind of expect was that when you do Alexa turn on the sun, and I'm sitting down here at my watching TV or whatever, when these lights are blazing down, especially at night, you can see any pests or damage to the leaves because the light just comes straight through these leaves, so you can see things like green fly really easily. And so it makes it really easy to keep checking on your plants. And yeah, that's kind of was a really unexpected benefit. So I mentioned that up on this shelf is fantastic in spring for tomatoes and peppers, but it's also brilliant for cucumbers because you can train them. So I have these big troughs of cucumbers up here, and I just train them along here. And it's just another kind of cascade of green foliage and fruit in sort of November time. Really great. So I mentioned in another video a couple of days ago that I've also got some grow lights in the garage, and the benefit of that is that the garage is cool, and at this time of year when you're starting things like lettuces and radishes and brassicas and things like that, for the first 2 weeks of life, they really want a bright, cool environment. They don't want a bright, warm environment. And obviously this conservatory is bright and warm, so it's not really an ideal environment for them. They tend to be a little bit leggy. Even with the grow lights, it's just too warm for those little seedlings. Now there's other ways to start them, of course, and some people pointed out in the comments that they successfully grow them in polytunnels and all sorts of different things, but that doesn't really matter. What I've got is that environment in the garage, and that works for me, and it's working beautifully at the moment. In winter, of course, it's much cooler in here, so the combination of the cooler conservatory with the bright lights means I can do all sorts of things that you wouldn't really be able to do until spring or summer in this conservatory space, because I can keep it above 50 degrees and I've got the grow lights. I can effectively duplicate the growing conditions of spring in winter, which means I can do some great experiments with early peppers and early tomatoes, trying out different varieties, things like that. It means I can get a really nice early start on some of my brassicas as well. So I can get early brassica greens at the beginning of spring, when effectively my other brassicas are kind of going to seed. And so that gives me a great opportunity for continuity. It also means I can play around with early cabbages and cauliflowers and Romanesco cauliflowers and calabrese and things like that. So there's great experiments I can run there. It means I can get things consistent. One of the things that really frustrates me when I'm doing my planning is that when I'm planning for something in spring, I might find that, from sowing to planting is maybe 30 days, whereas in winter, that might be 60 days, and it kind of throws off my plans. I have to keep juggling things around. But by effectively duplicating those spring growing conditions in winter, it means I can just always assume I can get everything from sowing to planting in the same 30-day period, which is just incredibly convenient. I can also grow microgreens, and I'm really looking forward to trying some of that, as well as growing some trays of lettuce in here, for example, as well. And you know, one of the challenges that we've always had is having really nice quality lettuces in January and early February. That's really the time when things struggle, even in the polytunnel on the allotment. And so for that period of time, when I won't have very much else growing in here, I can actually grow some nice big trays of lettuce. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I kind of did a bit of an experiment with that, with growing lettuces, and I've got a tray there behind me. And you know, I'm really pleased with those. They're not far off eating size, and they only took 3 weeks to grow to that size. So I could have 3 weeks of trays growing there and just eat a tray a week. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. So I just think, you know, for me, getting a bit bored in winter, it's going to provide not only a fantastic environment to sit in and just be kind of surrounded by everything growing, but it's going to just provide loads and loads of interest and so many potential experiments and so many ways to enrich our diet by growing things early and late, both actually in this room, but also starting things off early for planting out in the coal frames, the low tunnels and the polytunnel a lot earlier. So anyway, I'm really excited, and I thought, you know, it would be interesting for people to have a look at. I'll just show you quickly the Mars Hydro grow lights in the garage, just for completeness, because that's kind of all of the growing spaces that have kind of been optimized that I've got at home. Of course, we've got sunny windowsills and things like that as well, and they definitely still have their roles to play. So I'm just in my garage, and I just took one shelf unit and converted it into a little grow light tent. And there's no insulation or anything in here, as I said, because I want it to be cool. And I've got the light sitting up here. They do generate a fair bit of heat, these, and that's why it's important to keep this space cool. And that's why I have the grow light on only at night. And I've got quite a nice sort of selection of things here, and these are only about a week and a half old, all these seedlings. So the rate of growth is really fantastic, and they all look so healthy. Really lovely. And it's kind of resulting in me coming up with a whole new way of growing seedlings from start to finish. So yeah, I'll be excited to share that with you in a future video. So I also just wanted to quickly talk to you about temperature control in here. As I said, at night time, I've got a little radiator, and that's got a little thermostat on it. The radiator switches on, I think it's about 9 o'clock at night or something like that, and it switches off at about 8 o'clock in the morning. And it's on a little timer controller. And then I generally wake up about 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, something like that. And I open the roof vent, and that's really important, because that, as soon as the sun comes in here, that roof vent really improves both ventilation and it reduces the temperature. Of course, I've got windows all the way around here, but even in summer, even with all these windows, I can't keep the temperature low enough, so I can also open the doors. I've got the fan, and that makes a big difference as well, and that just generally improves air circulation, but it does result in more through flow through the windows and up through the roof vent. As I said, for things like cucumbers, peppers, tomatoes, it really does make a difference to keep the temperature above about 50 degrees. I can't do that in here without a little heater. That heater costs me in winter, when it's freezing outside, about 30 pence a day. Now you might think that's a lot of money. It's only for about 100 days a year, probably, something like that. And so that's about £30. I don't really worry about that. But, you know, it's such a wonderful kind of life-enhancing thing to grow so much food in here that, you know, yeah, the money's really not that important. So that's really nice. So the combination of heat at night and then actually temperature management to reduce the heat during the day You know, it's not a big chore. It's certainly it's actually a lot less work than it is opening and closing the polytunnel doors and things like that on the allotment, and I'm certainly used to that. So, and it actually reduces the amount of work on the allotment, because it means that really early crops of peppers, cucumbers and tomatoes, I'm not putting those in the polytunnel, which means I can plant the polytunnel in June with those frost sensitive crops. And because I can do that, it means that I've got quite a lot of a quite nice growing window in the polytunnel for things like beetroot and carrots and turnips and things like that, cauliflowers, Romanesco cauliflowers, calabrese and things. So I can get a crop out of the polytunnel by the end of May, at the time when I'm planting my peppers, my cucumbers and my tomatoes. Now, if I was planting those at the beginning of May, you know, sort of May the 5th, May the 10th, something like that, then, you know, it would be hard for me to get a crop out of the polytunnel of those things. I'd obviously still get a crop of the salads and, you know, the radishes and the spinaches and all of that sort of thing. But those longer season crops like the carrots, etc., those I wouldn't be able to get a crop out in that time by the beginning of May. So it does, just having those extra few weeks without the pressure of trying to get my peppers, cucumbers and tomatoes in there, you know, really makes a massive difference in terms of the crops that I can push through. I can get an extra full succession of crops out of the polytunnel, hundreds of pounds worth of veg out of the polytunnel that I wouldn't be able to do otherwise. And I'm not really suffering anything because, you know, I've got all my early crops in here anyway. So, yeah, it really makes no difference. And of course I can grow those on to be reasonably, you know, quite nice big plants by the time I put them out at the end of May, beginning of June. And then it also means I'm not fretting, I'm not worrying through early May to the middle sort of May that I'm going to get a frost on those things in the polytunnel, which we had this year. We lost loads of peppers and beans and things like that because of trying to put things in a little bit too early in the polytunnel. And then finally, I've got these little Bluetooth thermometers from SensorPush, and these, obviously there's no interface on them. The interface is on your phone or tablet. These are great. These track the humidity and the temperature throughout the day, and you can learn so much about what's happening in your grow space from these little thermometers. And one of the things I really like about them is they give you a really good indication of what the temperature range is in the space, because plants really don't like massive swings of temperature, so it's really easy to keep track of that. So I hope you like this quick video, and I suspect that, you know, nobody's going to duplicate the setup that I've got exactly the way I've got it. But hopefully there's a few ideas that will work for you in your environment, and I'd love to hear about those as well in the comments. So with that, I'll draw this to a close. My name's Steve, this is the Seaside Allotment channel, and I'll see you soon.